Hey YouTubers, Rob here with another look at another Commodore 64 game. This time, continuing the sort of trend, I'm now looking at Crazy Cars 2, which was released in 1988, a year after the original Crazy Cars. This is something I'm sort of a little apprehensive about after being kind of horribly disappointed with the first game. But this is a little better. They've gone back and made the tracks a little more sensible to drive. I find myself playing now, not hitting the corners as bad. And unlike the first game, there's a little bit of a story in that you're an undercover agent trying to basically race to blow a corrupt cop's stolen car racket. Compared to the 16-bit versions, this is rather Spartan. The 16-bit versions have this cool mechanic where you're having to, to make it to the checkpoints, you have to take turn off, so it's not it's not the simulator system like in Chase HQ, where you're at a predetermined junction. You have to actually look at a map and work it out. It actually adds a lot to the game. Here, the formula is pretty much the same as the first game. In fact, I'm convinced it's the same engine as the first game. You can tell by the font on the score panel, the general graphics, and you'll see it when I get the game over screen. You'll see it's the same, going back to the stock Commodore 64 font. But the tracks here feel a little... I guess I was saying, this kind of thing that happened in the first game, I found didn't happen as often until, I think it was about level 6 is where I got up to. In a previous play. So it's, on the other hand, there are these collision barriers, and they tend to not be configured all that well. You tend to hit them accidentally, which is a bit silly. But overall, it's still not great, but it's at least playable, which the first game wasn't. I mean, they've sort of gotten rid of the things that annoyed me the most, like crashing into a car rather than sending you flying out of control, you now explode. Although that may not be better. I mean, the controls feel the same, but I don't know, I feel it's somewhat more playable. I don't know whether it's down to, I feel it's because of the track design. The tracks are not as wildly nonsensical as they are, in terms of difficulty. But one of the things that isn't the case is there's a lot less presentation screens. You know, in the first game, you had the little intermission screen that showed you the statistics of the car you were driving, which, in the case as far as I got was just the Mercedes. Here, you lack those screens. In fact, when I loaded the game up, it went straight in. There was no title screen or anything, which is kind of a little disappointment. You expect a game from a fairly major publisher to actually have that kind of presentation. So that's why, I wouldn't be I could recommend this more than the first game, but it just feels like a bit of a poor port. I mean, it still feels terrible at points. Like, that curve just felt exactly like what my experience playing the first game was. And the graphics are okay, but the backgrounds have a bit of that, like a bit of color clash in parts. I'm not sure if that's intentional style or not, but it doesn't feel so good in part. But it's more playable than the first game, which is kind of not saying much. That was a close call. I believe it's third stage now. I mean, it would have been interesting had they been able to squeeze in the route picking, but I guess that they chose to keep the game to fit to a single load which may have been a wiser choice. I'm not sure. The other little thing I noticed is the top speed. In the original game, you could drive all the way up to 255. I don't know. I'm presuming miles per hour. Here, you're a much slower speed of top speed of 188. So I don't know if they've changed the units or tried to make it feel a little more realistic. But, I mean, I think it sort of shows that they were trying a little more with this game. And I also like that you can, as annoying as it feels that the car can spin now, it doesn't just go, it doesn't just go right to the wall to be out of control. So, I mean, that's pretty much what I think. It's still not great, but it's at least playable. So, I mean, I think if you could acknowledge that if you wanted to actually check the series out, you could at least play this. But to be honest, you really want to find a 16-bit computer and you really want to play it there. The game there, it's interesting if a little rough. Here it's just generic and a little frustrating. I'd rather take the little rough game myself. Ouch. I don't think I'll be finishing this stage. These crashes, a little too many in such a short time. But here you can see, I sort of mentioned that I didn't like some of the Horizon graphics. In this stage, you can see where they feel really ropey with some of those mountains. It looks almost a little color clash, which is not really something you really want to see when you've actually... Oh well. Like I said, I pretty much wasn't expecting to finish that stage. So this is Crazy Cars 2. It's improved, but it's still not saying much. Hopefully I'll have something a little more positive next time. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this, even if the game wasn't quite up to snuff. Thanks.